Alright guys, welcome back to Urge. Moving on to the subclass series, onto the next subclass, which is the Peace Domain Cleric from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So, if you're new to the channel or to the subclass series, what we're going to do is we're going to go through all of the abilities gained in the subclass, and then we're going to rate it based on its roleplay value, combat value, and overall class synergy, based on how the abilities gained in this subclass improve on the base class abilities. So, without any further ado, Alex, take it away.
Alright, so being cleric, you get free spells. Yes, it's a hot button issue. Yeah, we know.
It happens.
Clerics getting free spells that don't count toward their prepared list or anything. They're just free. Get clerics. Heroism, Sanctuary, Aid, Warding Bond, Beacon of Hope, Sending Our Impurity, Odalukes, I'm going to butcher that name, Resilience, Fear, Greater Restoration, and Rary's Telepathic Bond. So an interesting collection of spells, to say the least. My favorite of those is, of course, the Resilient Sphere. Puts it in a bubble. That's great. It's fantastic. You also gain proficiency in the choice of Insight, Performance, or Persuasion. You come off almost like an ambassador kind of thing, based on that's kind of a skill choice, and some of these other spells you get. And the actual first ability is Emboldening Bond. You can forge an empowering bond among people who are at peace with one another. As an action, you can choose a number of willing creatures within 30 feet of you. This can include yourself. Equal your proficiency bonus. Create a magical bond between them for 10 minutes or until you use this feature again, while any bonded creature is within 30 feet of another bonded creature. So it could be these two, you and somebody else. As long as two of them are within range of each other, they can add a D4 to any attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. Each creature can add the D4 no more than once per turn. So if you have two attack rolls because you have extra attack, you can only add it on one attack roll per turn.
Right. You
can use the feature a double times equal to your proficiency bonus, and regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So again, going along with the theme of the book of getting abilities that are use numbers based on your proficiency instead of once per rest or based on your modifier, for example.
Yes. So, at level 2, we get Channel Divinity optioned Balm of Peace. Use your Channel Divinity to make your very presence a soothing balm. As an action, you move up to your speed without provoking opportunity attacks, and when you move within 5 feet of any other creature during this action, you can restore a number of hit points to that creature equal to 2d6 plus your Wisdom modifier. The creature can receive this healing only once whenever you take this action. Then, at level 6, we get Protective Bond. The bond you forge between people helps them protect each other. When a creature affected by your Emboldening Bond feature is about to take damage, the second bonded creature within 30 feet can use its reaction to teleport within 5 feet of the first creature. The second creature then takes all of the damage instead. So, get your Barbarian in there. Get him teleporting around, saving everybody's absorbing all those hits, because they got all that health and nothing to do with it.
Besides take damage.
Right. Then at level 8, we have Potent Spellcasting. You add your Wisdom modifier to the damage you deal with any cleric cantrip.
Helps out with damage floor.
Yep, that's about it.
Never bad.
And then lastly, Expansive Bond at 17. The benefits of Emboldening Bond and Protective Bond now work when the creatures are within 60 feet of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Moreover, when the creature uses Protective Bond, it takes someone else's damage. The damage is resistant. So, you only take half damage when you save someone else's.
That is any damage type.
And you can all use it on each other, although it does take your reaction to do so.
But again, that is all damage types. So then you start finding, if you've got, races in the party that are already resistant to a damage type, like dwarves being resistant to poison damage for a second. For instance. Why did I get second out of that? Anyway, so somebody's about to take some poison damage, dwarf swaps and takes a quarter damage instead.
You got some
Yowza.
That can definitely be done.
Yowza.
Yes. So, all that being said, those are the abilities gained in the subclass. So now move on to the rating portion of the video. First up is the roleplay value, asterisk. As always, talking about roleplay value, we're talking about interacting with the world around you, interacting with NPCs, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat. That's the other one. Mm-hmm. And basically everything outside of the initiative order in a broad general scheme of things. Not talking about acting out your class fantasy, history, lore, background. All of that is on you as a player. Can't really rate you. We can only rate the abilities gained and how they might improve your potential to roleplay in different circumstances. So, that being said, looking at the abilities, you get extra proficiency stuff. You have a nice spell list. You basically have a mass guidance that you can give allies for a period of time. So there's some definitely interesting uses on there for the different abilities, but nothing that we feel like is super crazy. It can definitely be helpful. And of course, the Emboldening Bond is pretty solid. It is once a turn and isn't just a D4, though that can make a big difference in different combat scenarios and things like that, but that's its own thing. So with the RP side of things, how often are you going to be doing this, considering you have limited uses on it with proficiency? So you're probably going to be using it more in combat than you would be outside of combat.
Primarily.
So the limitation kind of holds it back a little bit. So we just went with a 3 out of 5 on the RP. Definitely some good options that you gain as a cleric, but they are pretty limited, I would say. Yeah. And you have to be careful when you use them as well.
On the combat side of things get interesting, to say the least. You got some combat-based spells, obviously, that will be able to do some interesting things. And Emboldening Bond, like Jameson said, will be primarily used in combat. But again, you being able just to spend your turn for the next 10 minutes to give everybody a D4 to an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, primarily, combat-wise, attack roll and saving throws. I can't tell you how many times a D4 has saved me on a saving throw. I've got a fun little magic item that he has created that gives me a D4 to all my saving throws. It has saved my can more times than I could count. Yeah. Because I was 1 under or 2 under on hitting it and, rolled that extra 2 and got over. So 1d4 doesn't seem like much, but it counts. Absolutely counts. The Channel Divinity, being able to it's not a teleport, but you're able to move through without provoking opportunity attacks. Right. And if you could hopefully line it up and at least get 2 people with the heal, you're gonna be really hard pressed unless you've got a party full of martial classes to get more than 2 at once with the heal. But it is still, it's a free extra heal that doesn't cost you a spell slot to be able to do, which is good, and you're able to get multiple people if you can line it up for a decent amount of healing. 2d6 plus a wisdom mod, slightly better than a cure wounds. 1d8 plus a wisdom mod. Protective Bond is decent to start with, being able to swap places. Primarily, you're trying to look at a barbarian, preferably, or at least a D10 of a fighter, ranger, paladin that you might have in your group to take some of those hits away from your wizard, your sorcerer, obviously, or the given things, or somebody that just happens to be low because they got lit up in a previous combat. Right. You didn't have time to do a short rest. Yep. Swap that around. Adding your wisdom modifier to cantrips helps your reliability and damage. Just helps the floor out. So even if you just get hosed and roll, 2d8, you roll a 1 and a 2. At least you're still going to get 8 damage out of that. So 3. So it just helps out your consistent damage. And then 17. Again, yowza. Being able to swap from 60 feet, and the creature that swaps him takes the damage, gets resistant. Again, I emphasize it. Find ways to exploit this. Not out of that by having, or know your racial resistances if you have any, or subclass resistances. Because some subclasses get resistance to specific damage. Yeah, or if you have magic items that give it to you, person that wears Belt of Dwarven Kind getting resistant to poison damage. Save my can versus a green dragon. Yes. Glorious. But yeah, being able just to choose, know that, again, comes from paying attention, know what's going on, be able to swap in and really help that. Drawback is 17's a long way away. Yeah. So score-wise, we ended up giving this a 3.5. There's a lot of little stuff. Again, like the heal is good, but being able to do it, line up more than 2 at once is going to be super, super unlikely. The Emboldening Bond is a D4, which is helpful, but it's nothing crazy. It doesn't really scale up higher than that. Like if it became maybe like 2D4 later, that'd be awesome. That'd be broken. that'd be awesome. Or maybe even a D6 would be a little bit better if it's scaled up. But again, a lot of stuff doesn't scale. A lot of the lower stuff doesn't really scale up into higher things. Right. And there's a huge gap between when you actually get something besides just the cantrip damage between 6 and 17. Right. And that's a lot of XP or milestone game played for 11 levels.
And I think another thing to keep in mind too is even with the bond, you're like, this bond is crazy, which it is. But you have to keep in mind that you have to be within 30 feet of each other. If you're within 30 feet, you have to be really careful who is bonded, because getting caster in a melee, staying within 30 feet of each other, that can be pretty scary for a caster to be that close to combat. So there's definitely some extra thoughts to keep in mind with this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like temper your expectations. You might be like, this is crazy, this is insane, which it is pretty solid. But again, huge gap from basically level 6. It's very front loaded, I would say.
Yes.
You could just dip
The
one level.
The
Gain a
one or
lot of
the 2 level dip to get the channel divinity.
Oh yeah, you could just. I mean, that's
very
great.
very good. Very
But
good dip.
Then there's going to be. I mean, when you get to 6, you get the extra little bonus for the reaction to teleport and absorb hits. And then, I mean, at 8 you do get your cantrip,
which is fine.
But that's. I mean, come on. You're going to get at 4 or 5 damage. I mean, for cantrips,
Yep.
you're probably going to be using your action for spell casting.
Most of the time.
And yeah,
You are a full caster after all.
Right, you have lots of spell slots to burn, so I mean it is what it is. But to go from basically 6 to 17 is, like Alex said, a long ways to wait, because most campaigns aren't going to even get anywhere near that, as it just happens to be. So maybe temper your expectations a little bit with this one. It is very interesting, very cool on the combat side, but keep in mind, things have to stay near each other, and that can be a little bit harder than you would think.
Especially if you're dealing with enemy spellcasters who will exploit the fact that you're
like,
within 30 feet of
next
each
to
other.
Like, here it comes, boys.
It's like, who
Going
wants,
cold.
Who wants fireball? You apparently both of you do, because you want to stay so close together.
There you go.
So, again, things you have to keep in mind.
Then lastly, onto the overall class synergy. Some interesting options on here. Channel Divinity gives a nice healing bonus to be able to assist allies and move a little bit more freely around the battlefield. The spell list is actually quite supportive as well. A good solid choice on there. Getting bonus damage to your cantrips helps the floor and helps you save some of your spells for supporting others with heals. So you can focus a little bit less on the damage side and focus more on the healing side of things, and not feel quite as bad, because you do get that little bit of floor bump on there. And of course, the bond provides strong support and battlefield control, with a little bit of the asterisk, because again, keeping in mind, people staying close to each other can be dangerous in certain circumstances. So always keep that in mind when you're doing this. But we overall feel like it is quite strong on the synergy, especially with clerics. Their primary focus is going to be spellcasting, as they are full casters, and their channel divinity, and just having a bit of the control support of the battlefield kind of thing. Not quite the same way as druids do, but they do have a solid list, especially with what's gained in this subclass as well.
A couple things I think of spell list wise, and I wanted to bring these up specifically, is spells like sending, like resilience, fear, things like that, greater restoration even. You're like, they're good spells to have, and you're like, man, do I want to prep this and use prep? But this allows you to always have it prepared and not have to worry about it. Because I think there's 3 people in our party that know sending or have known sending, but there's been multiple times when like two of us didn't prep it. Like, how far? Why do we do that? Because somebody needs to have it at all times. Like this, and same thing with a sphere, for example, and also as someone who mains a cleric, it's very important to understand like having a good, reliable use of channel divinity, because the baseline cleric one for turning and destroying undead, if you don't see undead for a long period of time, I can't count on my 2 hands how many sessions we have played without seeing any undead in our campaign. So again, having another use of your channel divinity from your subclass that's viable in more general use is very important for your overall class synergy.
Yes, and that being said, we went with a 4.5 out of 5, so we feel very strong on the synergy side of things.
Yes.
So that should wrap it up for this one, guys. There is, again, as we've been doing with all these, a quote from Tasha on this one. So we'll have Alex read that off real quick.
Indeed. They're a pretty good little succinct way of kind of giving you what this is all about.
Some flavor.
And with some interesting flavor behind it. And Tasha asks a question of the Peace Domain Cleric. Have these peaceful clerics even considered that they're subverting a most holy system? One where bad decisions coincide with the teaching power of pain. So she is concerned, maybe confused about how this works, but okay.
That's a thinker for you right there.
Absolutely.
But guys, if you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notifications to know all of our new videos are coming out, and the new giveaway that should be coming sooner than later. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.